Hi, everybody. So as Grace has said, I'm an occupational therapist and I'm working down in the Kerry Memory Technology Resource Room. You might be familiar with the Memory Technology Resource Rooms. There's about 22 across the country. And you might be familiar with what an occupational therapist is. So some people mightn't, when they think of occupational therapy or OT, it's a therapist in a hospital, or it's like a physio for exercise, or operation transformation is now as OT as well. But what we do is we look at maximizing quality of life and engagement in meaningful activities and to promote safety and independence. So that's what I'll be talking today about, living independently at home and how we can look at that. So if people have experienced an occupational therapist before, they might have been out to the house or might have given equipment, or you might have had a memory test with them, or some people have seen them for hand therapy. So because dementia is a progressive nature as well, OTs can come in and out at different times you might meet them, okay, depending on your journey. So what I do in the memory technology room, it's a space set up like a home environment to allow people with memory difficulties, not only with dementia, but any memory difficulties, to see a range of products and aids to make independent living easier, okay? And not all technology will help, so that's why we go through different types, okay? I've grabbed the picture here of the Waterford Memory Technology Library because that's where I used to work, and at the moment the Kerry one is a building site. We're getting it renovated, so each room is different and they're based in different places as well. Some might be in the local hospital, some might be in the primary care centre, or there might be standalone as well. You might be thinking now, how can you live more independently? And I suppose working with an OT, it can help enable your independence by, one, knowing the reason why you're having memory difficulties, okay? Sometimes we think of I can't remember something is because of our memory, but it might to do with our attention and the time that we're taking in the information. So is the radio on in the background or the telly on in the background while somebody's talking to us? So our attention is divided, and that can be really hard then to be able to remember at a later date. We can then adapt our activities. So it might be adjusting small things. If it's cooking, say, adapting it, having a timer there, or having, say, the grandkids or your wife or husband with you while you're cooking. Time management, so setting time limits and having prompts to when a task should be finished. Becoming organized, having checklists, or both safety or a little prompt at the front door. Have I got my keys, now my mask, my phone with me as I leave? And then there's different types of techniques that can help us to remember or recall different items. And an OT can go through that with you. So if it is to remember names, how am I going to remember this person's name? It's maybe by association. So what that means is, if I met Jack Black and he had black hair, I try to look at him and look at his face and say, okay, he's black hair and that's how I'm going to remember his surname. Or do I know anybody related to him, to try help the memory that way? Adapting our home environments, and I go into this in a little bit more detail afterwards, but through labeling things, color and lighting can really help. So everything I'm going to talk about, we mightn't think that we need it at the moment, or we don't need any technology. And when I say technology, it's not just about computers and tablets and things like that. It's anything out there. And I'll show you the different types of technology that are available. Even if you think you don't need things now, if it's a checklist or a memory book, It's to remember now is the time to create it into a habit for when you do need it. Okay. And before you see any of these technologies, go have a chat to your local OT or your local dementia advisor and to put you in touch with your memory technology resource room. Don't go out and just buy pieces of a technology. It mightn't suit you. So living independently at home and home adaptations that you can do. So as I mentioned earlier, increasing the lighting. If you can't see something properly, you're going to be so focused on your attention on being able to look at something that then to take in the information is going to be difficult. So having good lighting to either read the paper or say if it is to look in the cupboard to see what you're going to pick out next, but also to have good lighting when you're walking around the house to prevent any falls. So having a fall can be really difficult if you then say, unfortunately, break a hip. You go out of your home environment, and we're also used to our familiar environment, so we want to prevent any hospital admissions or anything like that. Having signs at eye level so that they're right there in front of us, that we don't have to go searching for them. People probably have heard that having color can stand out in the house. So having a red kettle or so a red sign somewhere makes it easier to see. But the most important thing is having contrast. Okay, so it increases the visibility. There's no point in putting a blue sign up on a blue wall. So you want to always create contrast. And something like this is having a different color toilet seat. Then if you have a white bowl, to have a red or brown toilet seat to make it stand out. But the one place that you want to avoid having contrast is on the floors. So trying having the same colored floor throughout. And this again reduces our falls. Sometimes if you might see if you go into a different room that it might look a different height if there's contrast. Okay, so that's why you'll see in a lot of say day centers or in the shops and things like that, that the floor is all one color. They don't change the color of the floor. So going on to technology then and how that can help independence at home. There's all different pieces of technology, and a lot of people would have heard of telecare devices. So the most common one of these are dependent alarms that you might press if you did have a fall at home or if you were in an emergency. And a telecare system or a telecare device is connected to a telecare system, and it is possible to monitor an individual at home, but you have to have that person's consent, and that's the most important thing, that the person who's being monitored knows what's going on and that they're okay with it, okay, and that they understand it. So the point of it is if there was an emergency, that it's easier to detect and it can be responded to immediately. So whether that is you might have somebody strange came to the door, or if it was that you might have left the house without anybody knowing. There's different types of sensors that you can get. So you can get fall detectors, you can get bed and chair and mats, and you can also get the motion sensors for if you were to go out, say at night time, or if you were to go out outside your range. So what that would mean, you can set some of these motion sensors or GPS devices that if you went off your local route for your walk, if you might have taken the wrong turn, say you're taking the longer route rather than the shorter route, that then somebody would be signaled. Okay, so it would either be signaled to a base unit, which would go to a call center, or to your loved one. A lot of the telecare devices have usually the option for 3 different loved ones, to be honest. So it calls them, and if they don't get in contact then it calls the emergency services. The other types of technology that are out there, so the first one will be standalone devices. And what this means is that it doesn't need monitoring. Okay, so memory aids, medication reminders, voice recorders, orientation aids. So that's like your clock to be able to keep track of the day of the week. And now a lot of people on your screens, the faces might be covering the clocks that are on the right hand side, so you can, if the black bar on top of the faces, you can move that over to the other side so you can see the different types of clocks that are there, or the telephone there with the photos on it. So if you needed somebody in a rush, it's going to be the hardest thing to remember their number. We are all like that. When we want something straight away, it's hard to remember that. So to press somebody's photo and you'll be able to ring them straight away. Other things that come under that are object locators. So there's a great object locator called the Tile that you can pick up in any electrical store. So the likes of Harvey Norman's or Kerry's. And if the keys go missing, it sends a little prompt out, either by a beep, or you can locate it then on a smartphone and a map as well. The other things that are really helpful is the small things that can make a difference at home. Okay, so as I said earlier, the checklist at the front door. We want to prevent you from forgetting things, but also prevent you from getting anxious about something. About doubting yourself, because what can happen is if you're so focused on the fact that you've forgotten something, you're going to be kicking yourself, God, I've forgotten that. Whereas if you give yourself a chance and have premeditated it by, say, going to the front door, checking your label, and checking your checklist, and it becomes a habit. When you leave the house then and you're like, do I have my keys with me? You can say, okay, I checked my checklist, I had them. And you can continue, rather than having to go back into the house, searching the house for them, and they could be in your pocket still. There are only some ideas of it. You can change the checklist to anything you want, even if it's your routine before you go to bed. Having a little checklist at the side of the bed saying, have I locked the doors, turned off all the electrics? To check that before you get into the bed, rather than being in bed and doubting yourself then and having to get up again. The benefits of these technologies: it can promote independence and autonomy. It can improve confidence and quality of life. It can help manage potential risks around the home. Okay, and it can help with your memory and recall. It can support engagement in meaningful activities. And I think that's the one thing that's really important. What can happen is when people get a diagnosis, they decide, okay, I'm not going to engage in this. I'm going to give everything over to my husband, my wife, or my children. But the important thing is to continue engaging and adapting the activities as you can. GPS technology, so that means having, say, a tracker for all the world, can help as well. It can help feeling of safety and have less anxiety. It can provide reassurance to your carers and help to feel less stressed, and can be used to provide useful information for planning of care. So that could be something simple as a notice board in the house of who's calling today, what time are they calling, that anybody who's coming in, your carers who are coming into your house, your daughter or son, that they know the timetable of who should be calling and when. But as I said, there is limitations and it's not for everybody. This technology that helps independence does need supervision. So it's not to replace care as well. And it's not the perfect solution. So not everything will have a quick fix. It will help. It doesn't eliminate all the risks, okay? But it only assists in improving safety and well-being, and uses use of devices that monitor people allow somebody else to track them, and that can raise ethical issues as well if the person's uncomfortable with that. But that's something always to talk about with your family members and also your OT. It is important to find out what works for you. Okay, everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. So if that your strength might be remembering what somebody says rather than writing it down or seeing something, we're all different types of learners, so it's trying to figure that out. Okay, and that can take a while, but with say that is the biggest challenge to enable your independence at home. We can all learn from each other as well with coming up with solutions, but the most important thing is to keep your functional role at home.